Welcome aboard Rocket Ship, the platform with the most relevant content for competitive examinations. This is Rocket Ship IS Lab and continuing with our series on answer writing for general studies papers of civil service main examination. We take up a question that you might come across in GS paper 1. Please read out the question carefully. Account for distribution of volcanoes across the world. What explains the presence of active volcanoes in the Andaman and Nicobar Islands and their absence in the Himalayan Karakoram Hindu Kush region? So actually you have to focus on this operative word, that is account for. What we are suggesting here, that the question does not require you to talk just about the distribution of volcanoes across the world. That is, you do not have to just mention which areas on the earth are, you could say, more volcanically active. Rather, you have to talk about the causes, or rather reasons, why there are more volcanism. That is, we see more volcanism in some particular area compared to some other areas on the earth. And the second part of the question, it requires you to talk about quite, you could say, basic observation, that is generally observed fact, that Andaman and Nicobar Islands have volcanism, one of whose examples is the Barren Island active volcano. At the same time, the Himalayan Hindu Kush and the Karakoram zone has no active volcanism. We are introducing our answer with making a very important observation that volcanoes are outward expression of the process of plate tectonics. So it is understandable that active plate boundaries would exhibit volcanism at greater degree. What we are actually doing here, that we are talking of a basic fact that volcanism is almost always due to, you could say, the plate tectonics, that is the movement of, you, as you certainly know, the plates of earth crust. And so it's again intuitive that, like plate boundaries, which are of two major types, divergent and convergent, volcanism too would be associated with these major types of plate boundaries. Actually, to be technically correct, plate boundaries are generally of three types. We would repeat it, generally the plate boundaries are of three types. First are the convergent boundaries. Convergent boundaries are the boundaries where two plates collide. Then come the divergent boundaries, where the two plates are going away from each other. Then there are transform boundaries, where the two plates are actually sliding past each other almost parallelly. But however, for the purpose of our present question, we are taking these plate boundaries as two primary types, that is the convergent and divergent plate boundaries. So again, as we are arguing here, that volcanism too is mostly of these two types, that is these two zones, that is the convergent plate boundaries as well as the divergent plate boundaries, would exhibit more volcanism compared to other regions of the earth. However, reflecting the complexity of earth processes, there are exceptions where volcanoes are found beyond plate boundaries. They are often called intraplate volcanism, that is intraplate volcanoes, or sometimes they are often christened hotspots as well. The adjoining graphic depicts the major volcanic regions of the earth. What are the major volcanic zones in the earth? As we have just discussed, they are first convergent boundaries and associated volcanism, whose examples being the Pacific Ring of Fire and the Mediterranean zone. Then come the divergent boundaries and associated volcanoes, whose examples are the mid-oceanic ridges and the East African rift. Then come the intraplate volcanism, which are often called hotspots, and some of the examples of hotspots are Hawaii Islands and the Reunion, which is situated in the Indian Ocean. Reunion is the hotspot that is situated in the Indian Ocean. Now, taking up these points in detail, the Circum-Pacific zone is the most volcanically active region on the earth. That is the coastal zone of the earth. The entire coastal zone of the Pacific, sorry, not of the Earth, the entire coastal zone of the Pacific is the most volcanically active region on Earth. This is why Indonesia, Philippines, Japan, Andean South America, that is the South American region around the Andes mountain range, etc., have so many active volcanoes. The convergent boundaries, the mechanism. Now we are going to discuss the mechanism of convergent boundaries and associated volcanism. That is the convergent boundaries have the denser oceanic crust subduct under the lighter continental crust. The former, that is the oceanic crust, melts under high temperatures prevailing in the asthenosphere, that is the upper part of the mantle. And the molten magma comes out as volcanism. We would again repeat this entire point, that what happens in the convergent boundaries when actually at the convergent boundaries, one of the crusts actually, one of the plates actually subducts under another plate, and it goes under the you would say it goes to the high temperature zone of the asthenosphere, and it melts down and comes out as magma. The most notable volcanoes like Krakatoa, which is in Indonesia, Pinatubo, which is in Philippines, Sakurajima, which is in Japan, Ujas del Salado, which is in Chile, Argentina, Cotopaxi, which is in Ecuador, Etna and Vesuvius, which is in Italy, and Santorini, which is in Greece, are situated on convergent plate boundaries. Again, we have to make a small suggestion here. What we are suggesting you, that you make small notes about these particular volcanoes, and you also mention in which country, or for that matter in which region they are found. It would be useful for the prelims as well. Then come the divergent boundaries. Divergent boundaries form the mid-oceanic ridges. The volcanoes are not violent here. This basic difference we have to keep in mind, that it is generally the convergent boundary associated volcanoes that are more violent, while the volcanism in the mid-oceanic ridges or the divergent boundaries, it's not a violent one actually. The boundaries are seen in all the oceans apart from the East African Rift. The EAR zone, now talking of the East African Rift zone, it has volcanoes like Old Dainio Lengai, which is in Tanzania, and then come the Virunga chain, which are in DR Congo, Democratic Republic of Congo, Rwanda, Uganda, etc. While we are here, we are also discussing this point. We would also mention that the Virunga National Park, it houses some of the critically endangered species like the mountain gorilla. So this region, the region around the Virunga National Park, it exhibits some of the divergent plate boundaries associated volcanism. Now coming to the intraplate boundary and associated volcanoes, some notable volcanic regions are away from plate boundaries. These are generally attributed to mantle plumes, that is welling up of the molten mantle. You can understand very well that the molten plume, the molten mantle actually, sorry, the mantle plume actually, they are generated much you could say much under compared to the plate boundary associated volcanoes. Hawaii and Reunion hotspot, which gave rise to Deccan Traps, are prominent intraplate volcanic regions. We have just discussed that the Reunion hotspot is situated in the Indian Ocean, and it is generally, you could say, taken as the prime cause for the Deccan Traps. That is, the Deccan Traps are due to the activity of the Reunion hotspot. Now coming to this part of the question, why Andamans have volcanism while Himalayas do not? The Andamans have active volcanism, as here oceanic plate subducts under continental plate. It forms part of Sumatra Myanmar volcanica. The Andamans actually form the part of Sumatra Myanmar volcanic arc. It is situated between Myanmar and Indonesia. In contrast, in the Himalayas, the convergence is between two continental plates of similar density. Therefore, there is no clear-cut subduction and melting of one plate. Therefore, the Himalayan zone lacks active volcanoes. We would repeat it for your better understanding that in the Andaman Nicobar region, what happens actually, the oceanic crust goes under the continental crust. That is the oceanic Indo-Australian plate goes under the continental Eurasian plate. As there is quite some difference in density between these plates, the denser plate goes under. But that's not the case in the Himalayan zone, where both the you could say converging plates are continental plates. That is, they have similar density. Due to their similar density, there is no complete subduction in the Himalayan region. So there is no volcanism in the Himalayan zone, while there is quite some volcanism in the Andaman and Nicobar Island, which forms part of the Sumatra Myanmar volcanic arc. So this was all for accounting for the distribution of volcanoes on Earth, and moreover, it also explains the often made observation that there is volcanism in Andaman and Nicobar, while there is no active volcanoes in the Himalayan zone. This was all for today. We would reassemble for the next lecture in a few days. As usual, we wish you all the best. Thank you.